Pastry chef witnesses Mafia murder, then the boss makes her an offer that changes everything. The humid New Orleans air clung to my skin as I balanced 3 tiers of wedding cake through the service entrance of Midnight Blue, the French Quarter's most exclusive jazz club where the city's power players conducted business over whiskey and live music. 24 years old, culinary school dropout turned freelance pastry chef, desperately behind on rent for the commercial kitchen I'd foolishly leased 6 months ago. Tonight's delivery represented 2 weeks of grocery money if the client didn't find some excuse to reduce payment. The cake, chocolate ganache with edible gold leaf and hand-piped sugar magnolias, was my best work, the kind of artistry that should have launched my career but instead barely kept me afloat. I maneuvered through the kitchen's controlled chaos, nodding to line cooks who barely acknowledged my presence. Service staff were ghosts here, seen but never remembered. The private dining room where I'd been instructed to set up sat off the main floor, accessible through a corridor lined with photographs of jazz legends who'd graced this stage over 6 decades. I pushed open the door with my hip, attention fixed on not dropping 3 days of work, and froze. 2 men stood over a body that hadn't been there when I'd scouted the location yesterday. The taller one held a gun, still pointed at the victim whose expensive suit now sported crimson spreading across the chest. Blood pooled on hardwood, reflecting warm chandelier glow overhead. Our eyes met, mine wide with horror, his flat with cold calculation that said this wasn't his first time. Time crystallized into that single moment of recognition, understanding that I'd stumbled into something that would irrevocably change everything. "Well, this is unfortunate," the man observed, his voice carrying faint Louisiana drawl softened by years of refinement. He couldn't have been older than 35, wearing a perfectly tailored suit, dark hair swept back from a face that would have been handsome if not for the absolute absence of conscience in his grey eyes. The cake slipped from my numb fingers, 3 tiers of chocolate and sugar magnolias hitting the floor with sickening crash. Buttercream and ganache exploded across my shoes, destroying them as thoroughly as this moment was destroying any illusion of safety. "Please," I whispered, though I wasn't sure what I was begging for. The second man, younger and clearly less comfortable, shifted nervously. "Dante, she's just the cake lady. She doesn't know anything." Dante, the name registered dimly. Dante Marchand, who owned not just Midnight Blue but half the French Quarter's legitimate businesses and, rumor suggested, most of its illegitimate ones. His family had controlled New Orleans' underworld for 3 generations while maintaining respectability that fooled no one and everyone simultaneously. "She knows we're here," Dante replied with calm that suggested he was weighing my life against practical considerations. "She's seen Marco's body, seen us, and will undoubtedly give excellent descriptions when police ask about the pastry chef who disappeared tonight." The casual acknowledgement of my impending murder sent adrenaline flooding through my system. I bolted without conscious thought, throwing myself back through the door, the corridor stretching impossibly long as I ran toward the kitchen and whatever slim chance of escape it offered. I heard pursuit behind me but didn't dare look back, bursting through kitchen doors with enough force to send a prep cook scrambling. The alley exit beckoned 30 feet away, freedom visible through the propped-open door where evening light painted garbage bins in gold. 20 feet. 15. 10. A hand closed around my wrist with bruising strength, spinning me around to face Dante Marchand's impassive expression. Up close, I could see the faint scar along his jawline, the slight asymmetry that made his features more interesting than classically handsome, and the complete lack of hesitation in his eyes. "Running was a poor choice," he observed, as if discussing whether. "Now we have witnesses to your panic, and witnesses complicate everything." "Please," I tried again, hating the tremor in my voice. "I won't say anything. I didn't see anything. Just let me go." Dante's head tilted slightly, studying me with unsettling focus. "You're a terrible liar, miss." "Chen. Harper Chen." The name escaped before I could consider whether honesty was wise. "Harper Chen," he repeated, testing how it sounded. "The pastry chef with the commercial kitchen on Rampart Street who's 3 months behind on rent and facing eviction by week's end." The accuracy sent ice through my veins. How did he know details I'd shared with no one? "I don't understand what you want." "I want you to stop running," Dante said simply, his grip loosening but not releasing. "And to have a conversation about your immediate future, which has become unexpectedly complicated." The alternative arrangement, as Dante termed it, involved my silence purchased through employment rather than violence. His younger brother Luca, the nervous accomplice, explained the offer while Dante made phone calls in a language I didn't recognize, though the authoritative tone transcended linguistic barriers. Dante needs someone to manage the dessert program for our restaurants, Luca said, perching on a chair while carefully avoiding looking at the covered body. You'd work at Midnight Blue initially, then oversee pastry operations at our other locations. Proven I won't go to police, you mean? I corrected, surprising myself with the bitterness. Luca had the grace to look uncomfortable. Dante doesn't usually give people choices. The fact he's offering employment instead of other solutions means he sees something valuable. My silence is valuable, I clarified. That too, Luca admitted. But you made that cake. He gestured to ruins spreading across the floor. That kind of artistry deserves better than a commercial kitchen you're losing anyway. The pragmatism was almost more disturbing than the violence I'd witnessed. They'd researched my work, my financial situation, probably my entire life in the time it took me to run through a kitchen. Dante ended his call and returned attention to me. My attorney will present employment contracts tomorrow. Housing will be provided in one of our properties, security included to ensure your protection. Protection from what? I asked, though I suspected I knew. From whoever might question Marco Banadetti's disappearance, Dante replied bluntly. His family will search for him, and your presence here tonight makes you a potential loose end they'd be interested in eliminating. Understanding dawned with sick clarity. I wasn't just a witness, I was evidence, leverage, and liability compressed into one terrified pastry chef who delivered cake at the wrong moment. And if I refuse? The question was theoretical, we both knew I had no choice. Then you'll leave tonight and hope the Banadetti family doesn't connect you to Marco's last known location, Dante said evenly. Though security footage shows you entering this room, and footage has unfortunate tendency to find its way to interested parties. The implicit threat hung between us, cooperate or become a target. He'd engineered a situation where my survival depended on accepting his protection, which required accepting employment that bound me to his world. I'll need to close my commercial kitchen, I said finally, acceptance tasting like ash. Already handled, Dante informed me. Your tools and supplies will be moved to Midnight Blue's pastry kitchen tomorrow. The lease has been paid through year's end should you wish to maintain it as personal space. The casual efficiency with which he'd already begun reorganizing my life was simultaneously impressive and horrifying. He'd anticipated my acceptance, prepared the infrastructure, and presented the fait accompli as generous assistance rather than complete control. The apartment Dante provided occupied the third floor of a renovated Creole townhouse in the Marigny, far enough from the French Quarter's tourist chaos to feel residential but close enough to walk to Midnight Blue. Luca walked me through security features, reinforced door, monitored entrance, panic button connected directly to private security. Dante wants you to understand you're safe here, Luca explained, demonstrating the alarm system. No one comes in without authorization. A very elegant prison, I observed, exploring the furnished space that was admittedly nicer than anywhere I'd lived. The kitchen alone was larger than my previous apartment's entire square footage. Luca's expression tightened. Dante isn't keeping you prisoner. You're free to come and go, maintain your life, see friends. The security is genuine protection, not surveillance. Except I can't go to police about what I witnessed, I countered. Can't tell anyone why I suddenly have lucrative job and expensive housing. You can leave anytime, Luca said quietly, meeting my eyes with unexpected sincerity. But leaving means losing his protection, which makes you vulnerable. The truth was undeniable. I'd witnessed a murder, making me valuable to enemies and dangerous to operations. The apartment wasn't prison because I couldn't leave, it was prison because leaving meant death from one faction or another. That first night, I couldn't sleep despite the comfortable bed and first real security I'd felt in months. My phone buzzed with text from unknown number, kitchen orientation at 6 a.m. Dante. No pleasantries, no acknowledgement of traumatic evening, just expectations that I'd report for work as if employment contracts signed under duress constituted normal professional relationships. I typed and deleted 3 responses before settling on simple acknowledgement, I'll be there. His reply came instantly, good. Wear comfortable shoes. The ones you ruined tonight were inadequate anyway. The observation should have felt invasive. Instead, I found myself almost amused by his bluntness, a crack in the terror that had defined the past hours. Midnight Blue's pastry kitchen occupied a corner few patrons ever saw, pristine space with equipment that made my previous setup look like high school home economics. Dante was already present when I arrived at 5:55 a.m., reviewing inventory spreadsheets with focus most people reserved for life or death situations. "You're early," he observed without looking up. "Good. I hate waiting." "You said 6, I pointed out, depositing my bag on steel counter. I assumed punctuality mattered. Punctuality is the foundation of competence. Dante finally lifted his gaze, assessing me with clinical attention. "Which you'll need given the timeline I'm implementing." The timeline was aggressively ambitious. He wanted signature dessert menu redesigned within 2 weeks, pastry service expanded to cover brunch within a month, and wholesale baking program supplying his other restaurants operational by quarter's end. "These are requirements designed for a full team, not a single chef," I protested, scanning projected numbers with growing disbelief. "Then hire them," Dante replied, as if the solution were obvious. "You have authority to build whatever team you require. Budget allocations are in the folder labeled Personnel." I flipped to the indicated section and nearly choked. The personnel budget exceeded what I'd paid annually in total operating costs. "This is excessive." "This is adequate for excellence," Dante corrected. "I don't tolerate mediocrity, Harper. Your work last night demonstrated capability beyond your current circumstances. I'm providing resources to match that potential." The compliment, if it could be called that, settled uncomfortably against violence that had preceded this arrangement. He'd seen my destroyed masterpiece on a floor where he'd left a corpse, and somehow concluded I deserved investment rather than elimination. "Why are you doing this?" I asked, abandoning pretense that this was normal business discussion. "You could have killed me or bought my silence with threats." Dante's expression remained neutral, but something shifted in his eyes. Marco's death was necessary but wasteful. He possessed skills my operations could have utilized if he'd chosen loyalty over theft. "You possess skills I'd be equally wasteful to eliminate." "So I'm a resource to be exploited rather than a witness to be eliminated," I translated. "You're an asset whose potential exceeds the risk you represent," Dante amended, faint edge entering his tone. "Most people don't distinguish between those categories. I'm offering you considerable advantage of being valuable rather than expendable." The brutal honesty was almost refreshing after a lifetime of polite lies. Dante saw me as useful, which paradoxically made me safer than any protestation of benevolence would have. "I'll need to interview potential assistants," I said finally, accepting the framework. "And approval authority for equipment purchases." "Both granted." Dante rose, meeting apparently concluded. He paused at the door, adding almost as afterthought, "The antique lighter on the counter is yours. Consider it a welcome gift." I turned to find stunning Art Deco lighter, silver with enamel inlay depicting magnolias. Picking it up, I noticed engraving on the base, "For Harper, who brings sweetness to bitter situations." The sentiment was so unexpected from the man who'd held a gun hours ago that I almost dropped it. When I looked up, Dante was gone, leaving me alone with expensive equipment, impossible expectations, and a gift that suggested layers I wasn't prepared to acknowledge. 3 weeks into employment at Midnight Blue, I'd hired 2 assistants and implemented a dessert program that had critics requesting reservations weeks in advance. The work consumed 18-hour days, leaving little time to process the violence that had precipitated this transformation. Dante appeared in the kitchen irregularly, always unannounced, observing operations with intensity he applied to everything. He rarely spoke beyond noting details, a piping technique, ingredient sourcing, team efficiency. His presence should have been intimidating, but I found myself increasingly comfortable being watched by someone who evaluated based on competence. "The chocolate soufflé needs less cream," he commented one evening, sampling dessert I'd just plated. "The flavor profile is excellent, but the texture is too rich for 4th course." I bristled at the criticism. Most customers prefer richer desserts. "Most customers have pedestrian palates," Dante countered, unmoved. "Your job isn't satisfying most customers, It's creating experiences that exceed their expectations before they articulate them. The distinction was subtle but significant, a philosophy of service that prioritized vision over validation. It was also characteristic of how Dante operated, leading rather than following, imposing standards others struggled to meet. "You're very certain about desserts for someone who runs a jazz club," I observed, testing boundaries. Dante's smile was brief but genuine, transforming his usually severe features. "My grandmother was a pastry chef before she married into the Marchand family. She taught me that sugar work is alchemy, transforming base ingredients into something valuable through precise application of heat and pressure." The glimpse into his history felt significant, rare personal revelation from someone who maintained careful separation between public persona and private truth. "Is she still alive?" "She died when I was 15, Dante said, his expression closing slightly. "Cancer. She made me promise I'd never settle for adequate when excellence was achievable." Understanding clicked into place about his exacting standards and intolerance for mediocrity. He wasn't driving me toward perfection out of cruelty, but honoring a promise made to someone whose expectations had shaped him fundamentally. "I'll adjust the soufflé recipe," I said quietly, acknowledging both his criticism and the vulnerability he'd offered in explanation. Dante nodded, but lingered in the kitchen longer than usual. He watched me work through evening service, occasionally making notes but mostly observing. "You're different than I expected," he commented as last orders went out. "Most people in your situation would have broken or run by now." "Most people in my situation would be dead," I corrected, meeting his eyes with newfound boldness. "I'm surviving the only way you've allowed." "You're thriving," Dante countered. "There's a significant difference. Survival is maintaining baseline existence. You've exceeded every expectation, built a team that functions with exceptional efficiency, and created desserts that have critics from Houston to Atlanta requesting reservations." The praise felt uncomfortable, too genuine to dismiss but too connected to coerced circumstances to accept fully. "I'm good at my job. That doesn't change how I came to be doing it here." "No," Dante agreed, his expression unreadable. "But it might change what doing it here means long-term." Before I could ask what he meant, Luca appeared in the doorway, his usual casual demeanor replaced by visible tension. "Dante, we have a situation. The Banadettis are asking questions about Marco's last known location." The temperature seemed to drop as Dante's focus shifted instantly. "Details," he commanded, already moving toward the door. "Security footage requests for the day he disappeared," Luca explained. "They've been subtle, working through official channels, but the pattern is clear. They are building a timeline." Dante paused at the threshold, looking back at me. "Complete tonight's inventory and go home. Marcus will escort you." He gestured to security personnel who'd materialized. "Don't leave your apartment until I contact you tomorrow." "What's happening?" I asked, fear creeping back. "Insurance," Dante said simply. "The Banadettis are fishing for evidence. I need to ensure they don't catch anything." He left before I could press for more information, and I was left with the armed guard and the uncomfortable reminder that I was evidence of a crime, that my value to Dante was predicated on staying silent, and that other parties might prefer my permanent silence. My phone buzzed at 2 a.m. with text from Dante. "Banadetti situation contained. You're safe. Marcus will remain outside until morning." I wanted to feel reassured, but contained could mean anything. "What does contained mean?" I texted back. His response came after a pause. "It means they've been convinced Marco left New Orleans of his own volition. It means you're no longer a liability anyone is interested in eliminating." "How did you convince them?" "You don't want to know those details, Harper." The gentle firmness was somehow more effective than any threat. "Trust that you're safe and focus on the chocolate soufflé adjustment tomorrow." The casual return to professional matters after discussing potential violence was so quintessentially Dante that I found myself almost smiling. "The soufflé will be perfect," I promised. "I have no doubt," he replied. "Sleep well, Harper." 6 months into employment, Midnight Blue's dessert program had become the subject of culinary magazine features. I'd expanded from solo chef to managing a team of 8 across Dante's 3 restaurants. Dante remained constant presence, appearing in kitchens at unexpected hours. His criticism had evolved from corrective to collaborative, suggestions offered with increasing respect even as he pushed for refinements. The blackberry tart needs acid, he commented during summer menu tasting. The fruit is too sweet without contrast. I added lemon zest to the crust, I defended. Not enough. Dante sampled again. The blackberries themselves need brief maceration with champagne vinegar. I tried his suggestion, grudgingly impressed when the flavor profile transformed exactly as he'd predicted. Your grandmother taught you that. She taught me that sweetness without complexity is boring, Dante corrected, rare softness entering his expression. That true excellence requires balancing opposing elements until they elevate rather than compete. The conversation felt metaphorical for more than pastry, balancing creativity against exacting standards, idealism tempered by pragmatism. We'd achieved partnership neither could have predicted that first violent night. Dante, Luca interrupted, his presence always presaging problems. The Benedetti situation has evolved. Dante's expression transformed instantly. Marco's brother. Worse, Luca confirmed. His father. He wants to meet. The name Benedetti had become background noise, occasionally mentioned but never directly impacting daily operations. That comfortable distance was apparently ending. Set it up, Dante decided. Neutral location, standard protocols. And Harper, he turned to me with unexpected gravity, you'll be there. My heart stuttered. Why would I need to be at a meeting with Marco's family? Because you're the reason they stopped asking questions 6 months ago, Dante explained with characteristic bluntness. Giuseppe Benedetti wants to meet the pastry chef whose presence at Marco's last known location convinced me to handle the situation diplomatically. Full picture crystallized. Dante hadn't just contained their investigation, he'd used me as liability. Evidence that killing Marco where innocent witnesses existed would have created complications neither family wanted. My presence had inadvertently saved both our lives by forcing a solution that avoided war. What does he want from me? I asked. Confirmation that his son's death wasn't disrespectful, Dante said. In our world, how someone dies matters almost as much as that they died. Giuseppe needs to know Marco wasn't tortured or discarded. He needs to hear that from someone who has no reason to lie to protect me. The meeting occurred at a restaurant in the Garden District, neutral territory. Dante insisted I wear the dress his stylist provided, emerald silk that probably cost more than my culinary school tuition. You're not a servant tonight, he instructed during the car ride. You're my head pastry chef, a professional who happened to witness an unfortunate but necessary business transaction. Unfortunate, I repeated. Is that how you characterize murder? Sometimes, Dante acknowledged. When the alternative is war that would kill dozens, unfortunate becomes acceptable characterization for a single death that prevents greater violence. Giuseppe Benedetti was in his 70s, white-haired and elegant in the way old-money Italian families cultivated. He rose as we approached, his assessment of me thorough but not unkind. Miss Chen. Thank you for agreeing to meet with an old man seeking answers about his son. I'm sorry for your loss, I said automatically. As am I, Giuseppe replied, gesturing for us to sit. Marco disappointed me long before his death. But he was still my son, and fathers need to know their children didn't suffer unnecessarily. The meal proceeded through several courses, Giuseppe asking careful questions about that night, what I'd seen, how long the confrontation lasted, whether Marco had appeared in pain. I answered honestly, editing nothing. He died quickly, I told Giuseppe finally, meeting his eyes directly. Whatever his reasons, he didn't make your son suffer. Giuseppe nodded slowly, something easing in his posture. Hearing it confirmed by an outsider who witnessed the act provides closure. Understanding dawned. This wasn't just about Giuseppe's need for answers, but about both families demonstrating commitment to avoiding future conflict. My presence served as neutral testimony. Your dessert program at Midnight Blue is remarkable, Giuseppe continued, steering conversation towards safer topics. My wife insists we make reservations monthly. I'm glad she enjoys the desserts, I replied, accepting the olive branch. The evening concluded with unexpected warmth, Giuseppe embracing Dante with complicated affection of families bound by history. Your grandmother would be proud of what you're building, he told Dante. Legitimate businesses that might eventually free your family from the old ways. After Giuseppe departed, Dante and I sat in temporary silence. You handled that perfectly, he said finally. Giuseppe respects honesty more than flattery. Your directness gave him what he needed. I just told him what happened, I replied, exhaustion making me honest. I'm tired of pretending everything about this situation is normal. Nothing about our arrangement is normal, Dante agreed with surprising candor. But it works, Harper. You've thrived under circumstances that would have destroyed most people, and I've gained something more valuable than leverage. I've gained someone I can trust. The admission felt significant. You trust me because I'm trapped, I clarified. I trust you because you could have lied to Giuseppe tonight, Dante corrected. Could have embellished Marco's death, made me seem crueler, potentially reignited conflict. Instead, you told the truth despite having no obligation to protect me. The observation was accurate. I'd had opportunity to sabotage Dante tonight. My choice to be honest hadn't been strategic. It had been reflexive integrity asserting itself despite complicated feelings. What does that mean going forward? I asked. It means you're free to leave if you choose, Dante said, the statement stunning me. Giuseppe's acceptance tonight removes the Bernadetti family's interest in you. There's no longer a credible threat requiring my protection. You can walk away from Midnight Blue, from New Orleans, from everything that happened 6 months ago. The offer should have been liberation. Instead, I felt strangely reluctant. And if I stay? I asked quietly, surprising myself with the question. Dante's expression shifted, revealing vulnerability I'd rarely seen. Then we continue building something together. Not employer and coerced employee, but partners who've learned to trust each other despite impossible circumstances. He reached across the table, his hand finding mine with unexpected gentleness. I can't promise you a simple life, Harper. My world will always carry complications. But I can promise you'll never face them alone. I looked at our joined hands, thinking about the journey from that first violent night to this moment of genuine choice. Dante had given me career, protection, and eventually respect. Somewhere along the way, he'd also given me something I hadn't expected, belonging. I'm staying, I said finally, the decision crystallizing with surprising clarity. Not because I'm trapped or afraid, but because I've built something here that matters. We've built something that matters. Dante's smile transformed his entire face, warmth replacing the usual calculation. Then we do this properly. No more secrets, no more coercion. Just partnership between equals. He produced a small velvet box from his jacket, opening it to reveal the antique lighter I'd been gifted 6 months ago, now mounted on a delicate gold chain. My grandmother's, he explained. Passed to me when she died, intended for someone who understood that sweetness and bitterness could coexist in the same moment. Understanding the significance of the gesture, I allowed him to fasten the chain around my neck. The lighter settled against my chest, warm from his pocket, a symbol of transformation from witness to partner, from coercion to choice. To new beginnings, Dante said quietly. To choosing what we build together, I corrected, meeting his eyes with newfound confidence. Outside, New Orleans stretched luminous under autumn stars. Inside, surrounded by the ghosts of our complicated history, we sat at the center of something unexpected. Partnership forged through violence but sustained through trust, respect, and the slow accumulation of moments that transformed obligation into genuine connection. The pastry chef who'd delivered a cake at the wrong moment had become the woman who shaped an empire's transformation. And Dante, the man who'd held a gun that first night, had evolved into someone who offered choice rather than demanded compliance. We'd both been collectors in our way, he of power and control, I of independence and safety. Together, we'd learned that sometimes the most valuable things couldn't be taken or protected in isolation, but only built through partnership that honored both strength and vulnerability. The past couldn't be erased. The choices couldn't be unmade. But looking at Dante across the table, his grandmother's lighter warm against my skin, I understood that redemption wasn't about returning to innocence. It was about transforming compromise into something meaningful despite flawed origins. 6 months ago, I'd witnessed a murder and believed my life was ending. Tonight, I recognized it had actually been beginning, the death of who I'd been making space for who I was becoming. And in Dante's eyes, I saw reflection of my own transformation, recognition that we'd both changed each other in ways neither could have predicted or prevented. The lighter against my chest caught candlelight, magnolias gleaming silver and gold. A reminder that even the darkest moments could be transformed through choice, partnership, and the courage to build something new from destruction's ashes. We were neither heroes nor villains, but people who'd chosen each other despite circumstances that should have kept us forever apart. And in that choice, in that partnership, we'd found something more valuable than safety or innocence. We'd found authentic connection forged in truth rather than illusion. The jazz club would open tomorrow, desserts would be served, and life would continue in its complicated, beautiful way. But tonight belonged to us alone, two people who'd survived violence together and chosen to build something gentler in its wake. And that, finally, felt like enough.